Okay, welcome to the April 11th uh, Implementation Advisory Committee meeting. This is the final policy meeting, excuse me. And so we'll start with a quick roll call and then we'll dive in. James.
Here.
Kari.
Here.
Becca.
Here.
Beth.
Here.
Felisa.
Here.
Lung.
Here.
Great, okay. So I sent you all the materials. I think the thing we're really going to be focused on today is the document is called the Final Policy Decision Points document. And you know, as you scroll through it, you can see I've talked to many of you already throughout this week and gotten a sense of where people are on these policies. And so then I went through, and so the final policy document is going to have the recommendation, like the staff recommendation. And the staff recommendation is adjusted to reflect the input I've received so far. So if the majority of people have said that they prefer, you know, option A as a policy option, I've updated the staff recommendation to reflect policy, you know, that. But then below usually has all the options listed out and then kind of reasoning behind each option too. So the critical point is when we go through the final policy document or final policy decision points document, we'll be looking at the highlighted section. And there are 5 ultimate topics. We will be talking about programmatic oversight because we actually do need an official vote on that. And there are some small changes that have been made at request of county staff. And then charter amendment, that's something we haven't really talked about yet. Qualification thresholds, violations and penalties, and contribution limit. Those are the 5 topics. And then next week we will be hopefully by the end of today, but at the latest Monday, I will provide you a draft of the full report. And we'll ask that you take the time to review it and offer, edits and thoughts. I think we're emphasizing, don't worry so much about like copy editing it because it's already going to go through has gone through multiple staff edits by people who like know how the county, what language that they use and what language they respond to. So when it comes to the report, the bigger thing to keep in mind is, does this accurately reflect the IAC's values? Is there anything critical that we have missed or mischaracterized? And is there anything that's so important that it would make you uncomfortable signing it? So I think that's the level of review we're looking at. So that's the report. And then before we begin, I also want to let you know that on May 6th at 9 a.m., we have a meeting scheduled with the Board of County Commissioners. We will be giving them a presentation on the results of your, recommendations too. And, we'll be briefing them all beforehand, but that'll be really a chance to engage with the full board. We are actually looking for 2 individuals to join, and hopefully individuals who were deeply involved in the conversations. And it would be great if they, represented like diverse communities and backgrounds too. So if are there any 2 individuals here that are interested in it? And if not, we can always like communicate by email too about it.
I would generally be interested. Sure.
Okay.
I'd say the timing is challenging for me, but I'm willing to do it if needed. But I would prefer to kind of be a backup, and I would nominate. They're going to be maybe mad at me, but I would nominate Beth, who I think is really eloquent and, represents, I think, an important kind of segment of constituents for this, if they're interested, but would definitely have my vote.
Yeah, I can do it. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that. That was very kind.
Great. Okay. I'm just gonna shoot a text over to Terrence and Roxana and make sure they're on. Okay. Great. All right, well, let's dive in. So as I said in my email, I think we're going to run this meeting a little differently because this is our final policy meeting and we have quite a number of items to get through. I don't think they're each going to take that long, but we just like the quantity is something that we need to move through efficiently. And most of these items are things that we've already discussed before, aside from charter amendment. So with some of the items, you've asked me to come back with research or, written out language. And then with contribution limits, we've had multiple meetings about this before too. So I think we're going to start with I'm going to spend like a minute or two just covering what the changes are to the policies or what the critical points to know. And then I'm going to ask if we are ready to do a vote. If people are ready to do a vote, then we can just move forward and hold that vote. But if folks feel like they want to have a conversation, then I'm going to ask you to raise your like emoji hand, and then I'm going to set 10 minutes on the clock to have that initial conversation too. If people feel like it's very important to have more, we can like troubleshoot at that point. But I think the goal is to be able to like make sure we're on the record about a lot of these items too. So let's start with the contribution limits one. So I think if you look under the contribution limits part of the final policy structure points, there are several items that we've added that I've highlighted. And again, these are reflective of the conversation I had with you all individually. So this is why it's a staff recommendation. So we'll take this in two parts. Number one is the IEC recommends a policy of $350 contribution limit on individuals and qualifying organizations, excluding small donor committees. The intention is to align the contribution limits for these donors with the limits established under the Portland Small Donor Elections Program. Participating candidates cannot loan or give more than $350 to their campaign. The IEC recommends that the Board of County Commissioners establish the limits. So that's the entire policy, but we'll do who can set the limits in a second. We'll do the first part about the size of the contribution limits. Do people feel ready to vote, or does anyone want to have 10 minutes of conversation about it? In which case, if you do, I ask you to put like an emoji hands up. Okay, Felisa, I'm gonna go ahead and put a timer on, and then we will start with that. Go ahead.
I just feel like I don't support the recommendation on the small donor committee limits. I think it disincentivizes small donor committees from participating in the program. So,
Well, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. And maybe the language isn't clear. The IC recommends a policy of 350 contribution limit for individual organizations, but that limit does not apply to small donor committees. That's what I meant by that. Like the small donor committees do not have a limit.
okay, that's what I thought was in this language, but I felt like then you said something different. So great. And I'm ready to vote.
Okay, I'm gonna write here, and the limit does not apply to small donor committees, just to make sure we're clear on that. Is anyone else I did see any other hands raised, but in case there are, we still have the timer going.
And we're voting on the 350 or not? We're voting on 350 versus 603, or what exactly are we voting? What will we be voting on?
Yeah, ask that we have the vote on the 350.
Got it.
And just that. And I will also emphasize that we are going to include all viewpoints, or we're going to include the 603 viewpoint in the report too. So that will be represented at, one way or the other too. Okay, let's hold a vote. So do we have a motion to adopt the language here, excluding the IEC recommends the board part? Do we have a motion for that?
I'll move.
Okay. Let's go take notes on this. Okay. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kari.
Along with my fellow member of the limits subcommittee, I support a 603 limit, so I'm going to vote no.
Lung.
I guess I'll also vote no.
Okay. Felisa.
Can you come back to me? I'm just trying to read the 603 option.
Beth.
Yes.
Becca.
Sorry, I'm choking. Yes.
Hope you're okay. James
Yes.
and Felisa.
No.
Okay, we have a tie. I think what we're gonna do is let's just proceed. And then, you know, if more people join, we'll ask to hold that vote again. So I'm gonna pause that timer. Okay. So then the second part of the second part of the vote is on who has the ability to set the policy. So you know, we have multiple options. Option one is that the IC recommends that the Board of County Commissioners establish the limit. Well, and you can see that highlight. I'm going to highlight it right here on the document. The IC recommends the Board of County Commissioners set the limit with automatic adjustments for inflation, which you already voted on last time. And the Oversight Commission is empowered to raise the limits for underfunding, which you already voted on as well. That's what I put in a recommendation because that's what I heard the most support for. But the other option is the IC recommends that the Oversight Commission set the limits, including adjustments for inflation or program underfunding. So I recommended the Board of County Commissioners setting the limits, and I did for two reasons. Number one is generally, you know, what you all have set out is that the Board of County Commissioners is voting on like the high level policy pieces. They're voting on the big fundamental parts. And then the Oversight Commission is voting on like the more granular parts that we set in the administrative rules. So this continues through with that, you know, with that same vein. It applies that consistent approach. And so, well, actually, I'm sorry, that's the main reason why I made that recommendation. Do people feel ready to hold a vote on the IC recommending that the Board of County Commissioners establish the limits, or do they want 10 minutes of conversation? I see both hands for 10 minutes of conversation. So I'm going to start a timer on that. Okay. I think Felisa saw your hand first.
I'd like to make a motion that the recommendation is that the Oversight Commission have the power to set the limits.
You want us to all vote on that motion now, or do you want us to have, is it okay if we have a little more conversation?
Well, I've made a motion, so I feel like if we want to follow parliamentary procedure, then I need a second, and then we can have a discussion about that.
Okay, do
Or
have
are
a
we
second?
not?
I'd second.
I'll second. Yeah.
Okay, let's hold a vote on that then.
No, I think that now we open it for discussion.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. My apologies. Okay.
So I feel like this is very confusing to me. Are we doing parliamentary procedure or not? But either way, I'm fine with it. But right now I'd like to speak to why I'm recommending the IAC committee to set the limits as opposed to the county commissioners.
Okay.
So I felt like from our last conversation, we wanted to sort of keep the appearance of a conflict of interest out of the discussion. I feel like we spent a lot of time setting up an IAC committee that helps to keep that conflict of interest out that appearance of a conflict out of the discussion. I also feel like the IAC will be very much in the like details of how those limits need to be adjusted, how what's sort of happening, all of those components. And so I would prefer it if the IAC were to set the limits.
Okay. Anyone else wanna? Okay, Becca.
Ditto, both for the independents, as well as they are tasked specifically with being in the weeds. This is their job, as opposed to the county commission, who has many jobs. And I would just add a third, which is, we've talked about, being consistent with other systems. And this is consistent with the Portland Independent Commission, who also has the authority to set limits for the city system.
I do want to be clear that the Portland Elections Commission has the authority to set limits if there's underfunding, but generally the contribution limits are set by the county, or by the city council. I don't know whose hand I saw first, Beth or Kari.
Go ahead, Beth.
Well, thank you. I agree. I think in my brain, it makes the most sense that the oversight committee were to be the ones to set the limits, pretty much for exactly the same reason that Felisa said, in that the county commissioners could potentially have conflicts of interest, could potentially have, maybe if they didn't use the system and it was a harder race or whatever, there could be feelings of discontentment, potentially even towards the program. I don't know if that's fully going to happen, but it always could. And I just feel like the oversight committee has a little bit more of an objective perspective that would allow them to set the limits, I think, in a little bit more of a way that makes most sense for candidates in the program. So I would agree with Lisa and Becca.
Okay, Kari.
Yeah, I think I was one of the people who said, the county commissioners should do it. And my thinking at the time was they should set the big policy, and the IAC would do the granular stuff. I think I'm persuaded, though, Felisa, that you got it right, to avoid the conflict, the perception of a conflict. I'm sort of playing it out in my head here, like we're in the middle of election season, and maybe there's underfunding. Maybe the underfunding was created because the county had to do some budget stuff, and now all of a sudden you've got the county commissioners, some of whom are up for re-election, going, let's jack the limits up. That's going to look really self-serving and ugly. So I guess I'm persuaded we should push it back down to the IAC level.
Okay, James.
I was really ambivalent about this one, and not ambivalent in the don't care, but like I could see the benefits of both sides. For me, I'll just return to, I think I'm okay. I think either way, I think there's good arguments on both sides. If we're going to have it be with the Independent Oversight Commission, I really don't think it makes any sense to have automatic risers for inflation. It's like, obviously, if the Oversight Commission is looking at it every cycle to figure out like what's the right thing, and they're potentially adjusting the limits up or down depending, then it seems weird that we would say, oh, and also you need to use the limits from last time and add an inflationary factor in. That feels like it doesn't make sense to me. But I think there are good reasons to have it be with the Independent Oversight Commission. I want them to be looking closely at what's working and not working and be able to adjust it, not in a way that disrupts, elections that are currently in process, but one that like learns from things that didn't work and improves it for the future. And I do see having the kind of big, I think for political reasons, the county commission might override us on this anyway. I think the county commission is going to want to have like established the big picture things regardless of what we recommend. And I think there are, good arguments there, but I would be in support of having the oversight commission do it as well.
Okay, I think, Kari, did I see you raise your hand next? Okay, Felisa.
So I think just for clarity on what the commission is adjusting, There are limits in the statute, so they cannot go above those limits. They can only go below. So I
Yes.
think so that's another point I think that is important. The big policy on this discussion has already been decided. That's already done. Now you're into the weeds, the nuts and bolts of like when they get adjusted, how they get adjusted, all of that component.
Sorry, Felisa, was that in response to me or?
No, just in general that
Yeah,
we're
okay.
clarifying, like, because
Yeah.
I think so it wasn't in response to anybody actually. I just wanted to be, I feel like one of the decision-making points was to Kari's point, like the county deciding the big policy stuff, which I totally agree with that concept. However, this actually has already been decided. Because it's no longer a big policy
You're talking about
because of the
you were talking about what's in the charter.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why this is why it's an important point for my motion. So is like, I don't see it as a big policy point because it's already been decided in the charter fundamentally. And so you're sort of on the edge, on the margins.
I guess I don't fully understand that. I don't know that it's important. I mean, if the point of the motion is to switch it to have it be the oversight board, I'm fine with that, and we can go ahead and vote from my perspective.
I move that we vote.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We've
Second.
already had it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Well, it's like closed debate or whatever.
Yeah. So we're closing debate. Let's call the question. Great. Can we move to a vote?
Yes, okay. So let's just gonna make sure I'm taking notes on this. Okay. Commission sets the limits. Okay. Let's start the vote. Felisa,
Yes.
Becca,
Yes.
Kari,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Lung,
Yes. Also, I have to head to class now, Daniel, so I'll be heading out shortly.
okay, thank you. Roxana,
Yes.
great. Okay. I'm still waiting for Terrence to join because he told me he would yesterday on the phone. So let's proceed with the other points, but if he does join, then we'll come back and do the size of the limits if that's okay with people. I know he was like invested in that conversation. Okay, so moving on to the next point, violations and penalties is a little bit lower on the documents, the next section over. And so after talking with folks here, the original proposal was that only candidates can file. Oh yeah, Felisa, go ahead.
No, I want to go ahead. I want to have debate. I want to have a discussion about this point.
Okay.
Do you want to lay it out first, or do you want me to, or do people feel comfortable just jumping into discussion?
I have already updated everyone here. I do want to, I've already briefed everyone on the background, but I do want to just talk about the highlighted part for a second. So with the highlighted part, after talking to y'all, it seemed like there was more to develop on this policy. And in terms of like, what are the lengths, like what's the timeline for resolving a complaint? And what are some of the language, excuse me, around tips and complaints that you all asked for in the bill itself? So I actually am revising this, and what the recommendation is a program shall establish a timeline and a process for receiving both complaints and anonymous tips and administrative rules. And so the process should establish a resolution timeline for all complaints, but does not identify what the resolution timeline is in the recommendation. Complaints may only be filed by candidates running for the same position or their campaigns. Anonymous tips may be filed by an individual. The process will not have an established resolution timeline, but staff are instructed to provide a thorough response in a reasonable time period. So I've updated that recommendation to reflect what we've heard so far. With that being said, though, Felisa, do you want to be on the conversation?
I do.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I think that there's an important piece about the complaint process that is that this complaint process should align with the Secretary of State's complaint process around the timelines and who can file complaints and the manner in which complaints can be filed. And I feel like we should recommend that the county seek a memorandum of understanding or an intergovernmental agreement with the Secretary of State's office on complaints and enforcement, which is different than what you're recommending here.
So in what you're suggesting is that if there's a member and understanding in IGA, then the Secretary of State's office would be the one in charge of enforcing the rules of the program. Is that right?
Yes, I think that to me, I feel like if there's one process for complaints, I think, and the rules on complaints are the same, I think it will help with enforcement, which I will say is lax. And it will not require the county to establish a whole other enforcement process and unit around complaints.
Okay. I do want to say that since we're having a discussion about it, the one concern I do have is that like we have our own unique rules in the program, particularly like spending restrictions on what you can do with matching funds. And
Yeah, I understand that. That's why you would have to have an intergovernmental agreement or a memorandum of understanding.
yeah, because I am a little nervous about the idea of like the Secretary of State's office enforcing a public financing program rules, that that's like not something they typically do. But let's continue with the conversation, Beth.
Yeah, I was on the violation subcommittee, and we did align it with Portland's violations program quite closely. Kind of in the same vein of what you were speaking to, Felisa, and that we wanted it to be a coherent program that matches. It's not confusing, it's not adding a whole lot, but it's hard to do that, I think, with on the state and the Secretary of State side, being that there's no statewide matching program. So that was our intention with trying to match it to the city of Portland's, was they have a matching program. Let's align our violation timeline. So I don't know if that's helpful at all, but just wanted to provide that insight.
Kari?
First of all, apologies for, I think I was typing loudly earlier. Felisa, I like the instinct. It would be great if we had one investigative authority in the state for campaign violations. I'm not sure we can recommend that. We can create that here. I think we could, however, say something along the lines of that we recommend that the county, explore options, utilizing Secretary of State's, enforcement mechanisms. I think we can just declare it here. I think we need to sort of recommend an exploration process.
I think that's what I'm suggesting, is that the county explore either a memorandum of understanding or an intergovernmental agreement with the Secretary of State's office. Whether they get there or not is a different question. And I do know that the city has been in conversation with the Secretary of State's office on complaints and enforcement when it comes to campaign finance. And so I feel like my hope is that both the city and the county could get there.
Yeah. They might need statutory authority from the legislature even to do it, but I don't know. It's all worth exploring.
I think I saw Beth and James.
Oh, I'm just not familiar with what a memorandum of understanding is. Could somebody enlighten me, please?
It's less than an intergovernmental agreement. So an intergovernmental agreement is like legally enforceable, and a sort of a little memorandum of understanding is like, okay, we both understand that this is how we're going to do this process together. So it's like a little less legislative heavy than an intergovernmental agreement.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
James.
Felisa, is your intent to kind of make sure that things are standardized as much as possible between the city and the state and the county? Because I think we should just basically say that. I mean, I don't know from my standpoint if I need to specify that it's like an IGA or memorandum of understanding, but I think like our recommendation to the county is both that the processes and possibly the actual enforcement is as centralized and standardized as possible. I feel like that's a recommendation that makes sense to me and that I think reflects kind of what we've said elsewhere. Like, let's try to make this as streamlined and replicated as possible across the city and the county, which are the only two, entities that will have public financing programs, and then also with the state for, contribution limits and other things that like the state's good at enforcing. Well, the state currently theoretically enforces.
Okay, Becca. And Becca, you're on mute.
Oh, thanks. I feel like there's general agreement on the sentiment of what Felisa is laying out. I also feel like we should direct the county or compel them to enter into some type of like a memorandum of memorandum of understanding. I think is important, even if it's aspirational, because if we say, hey, county, you should make sure that you engage with the state and work with them. I would just like something a little bit more tangible. So, I mean, not that we would, it sounds like we're not directing the county to turn over their enforcement immediately to the Secretary of State. What we're saying is like, please enter into some type of actual relationship to get there. And so that, whatever that language looks like is what I would want us to get to. The other thing that, and I'll just share since we're on the topic, that I shared with Daniel around enforcement, because there will have to be some enforcement that the county takes on in this interim period before, in an ideal world, all the stars aligned and there is a unified system of enforcement, is capacity, right? If the program is underfunded and there's only one person staffing the program and there are a couple of legitimate complaints and we have this tight 10-day timeline, that's undoable, right? In terms of the ability to actually fulfill that. So
Okay.
that's a concern.
Felisa.
I wanted to add in another discussion topic on this, which is the anonymous tips may be filed by an individual. Neither the city nor the state have the ability for anonymous complaints to be filed. So you can call and ask the Secretary of State questions about something that you may think is a violation. You can do the same at the city, but you are not allowed to file an anonymous complaint. And so I think this idea of like anonymity in complaints that should not be a thing.
Are you saying because it wouldn't be anonymous because there's public records requests? Is that why?
No, I don't think you should. I think you can file anonymous complaints in other forms in government, right? But I don't think you should be able to file anonymous complaints. You have to file a complaint with your name on it.
Well, in the city of Portland has language here that says anyone can provide a tip to the program of a possible violation by calling or emailing a program at a phone number or email address published on our website. Tips may be provided to the program anonymously. So I mean, like that, I don't know if there's a hiccup to enforcing that, but I know that
But once it becomes a complaint, I feel like it has to be public, right? That's clear.
I see what you're saying. I think Beth, I saw you next.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not sure if tips should be anonymous. I mean, I know when we were initially having conversations around whether it can just be other candidates that file a complaint, a lot of that conversation was around, well, we don't want an opponent's friends, families, whoever to just flood in the system with bogus complaints or bogus tips. And I think by making it anonymous, that almost incentivizes people to send in bogus tips around stuff that's not rooted in actual violations. So I would recommend, I love the tip system. I know we talked about how it also seemed weird that only other candidates were allowed to file complaints. I completely agree. I think a tip system is important, but I do think that there also needs to be a little bit of accountability on the person filing the complaint, if that makes sense, so that they're not just sending stuff in willy-nilly because somebody said something that they don't agree with, and then there's going to be a bunch of tips submitted. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, I'm actually going to ask that because we have hit the timer for 10 minutes. I'm going to ask that we, I'm sensing some consensus here around Felisa's original proposal. So I'm going to ask that we get to a place where we can hold a vote on it. So I'm going to remove this part from the recommendation language, and I'm not going to formalize. I'm just going to take the notes right now so we can move through it quickly. But I'm hearing that the board of the IC is going to recommend that the Board of County Commissioners explore a memorandum of understanding or an IGA with the Secretary of State's office for enforcement of the rules. Is that
I think that's in addition to what was there previously.
okay.
We'll put that back, and then I think we had two potential edits. One is Felisa's bit about exploring, having Secretary of State do it, and then two, removing the word anonymous.
Okay. Is that right, Felisa? Okay. I was gonna. Okay, so BOCC should explore MOU or IGA with the SOS office for enforcement of program. And then I'm going to get rid of that word anonymous. We'll just do tips maybe provided. Okay. Do we have a motion for a vote?
So moved.
There's one more anonymous in the first bullet,
Oh, thank you.
and then seconded.
Great. All right. Violation. Okay, so the motion is to adopt the language that is highlighted there. And we have a second, so we'll start with the vote. Felisa?
Aye.
Kari?
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
James?
Aye.
Roxy? Roxana? I think you're on mute. She might have stepped away for a second. Becca?
Aye.
Okay. So then moving on to the qualification threshold. In this one, you all asked there's only one small change. You all asked to explore whether or not someone under 18 could be allowed to give under the program and thus be counted as a qualifying donor. And so we ran it by legal, and they said yes. There's nothing in federal, state, or local law that would prevent someone younger than 18 from giving. And I think in my conversation with all of you, there's like, I think the general consensus was a minimum age of 16 would be permissible, and would be comfortable with most people here. Does anyone want to have conversation about this? Okay, Beth, I'm gonna put if it's okay, I'm actually gonna start with 5 minutes on the calendar, given that I think we're gonna lose some people at 10. I think we'll have people coming back a little bit later, but I want to be able to make sure we're doing that. So
Am I
Go
gonna
ahead.
start? Okay.
Hmm?
I personally don't think that we should have a minimum age. I think that kids younger and younger are getting more involved in politics. I know I personally started getting really involved when I was like 14 or 15 is when I was started organizing protests. And I think that if we can get kids involved in politics as young as possible, that's what will create more engaged members of our democracy. So I don't think we should have a minimum at all. I understand why people chose 16, but I will stop speaking so other folks have time.
okay, I'm actually not gonna call on people because I'm gonna give Terrence a call so we can get him on. But go ahead and whoever wants to go next, just
I
please
think
proceed.
Felisa was next.
Okay, so I agree with Beth that we shouldn't have a minimum age and that it actually should just follow the federal rules, which is the contribution is made knowingly and voluntarily by the minor. The funds are owned or controlled by the minor, such from a trust fund or financial account in their name. And the contribution is not made using funds given to the minor for purposes of making the contribution and is not controlled by another individual. I feel like if those standards are set, no, the federal government doesn't have an age limit. Those are the clear rules. And that should be that.
I basically I basically disagree. I'm totally in line with Beth's comments that like there's not a very good place to set a limit, and that folks younger and younger are getting involved in politics, and that's great. But to push back on Felisa, I think the things that Felisa read that are in law, like if we could enforce that, that would be great. In practice, that is not enforceable. And what ends up happening is that folks donate on behalf of their kids with money that is expressly given for the purpose of donating, which will, in this case, mean lots of public money, potentially being expended. And there is no way to enforce did the minor control the funds or not? And so in practice, this will mean that, people can bundle for their family, which I don't think is good for the program.
I will just add, I agree with no limit with the federal definition. And the only thing I would counter to what James said is the bundling can happen with adult children, regardless of age, right? So if someone's going to, find a nefarious way to game the system, they're going to, it's irregardless of age. So I would, again, just go for the federal definition with no age limit.
Yeah, James, I hear your concern. I guess I actually have more trouble with the idea of adult children bundling, which would be allowed, than with the idea of parents giving their kid a little bit of extra allowance and then letting the kid donate to a candidate. I do think, I think I told Daniel I thought the number should be 13. And the reason for that is that while the federal rules are what they are, as Felisa said, there's also another law, the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, COPPA, which basically makes it impossible for organizations to collect data about people younger than 13. Very strict rules to collect data about children under 13. So I would put the number there, but I am good with either getting rid of it entirely, making it 13, or making it 16. To me, this is not an important question.
Hey, Becca?
You raise an interesting question, Kari. So if, say, a 12-year-old donates how does that law that you just referenced interact with the requirements of the small donor program to collect contributor data? I mean, maybe that is a question for the attorneys for a later date, but that'll be something for rulemaking.
Yeah, I don't remember the rules exactly, because basically my advice to every campaign I've ever been part of was don't try and collect data from people under 13. Now, is that different for a government agency? Probably.
Okay. Well, we have hit our time limit. So I'm hearing that there is some folks are saying no limit. And then Kari's point is, well, don't collect data for people younger than 12 because of COPA. Do people feel comfortable establishing a younger age limit at, say, 13 or 14? Knowing that, like what Kari said about COPA.
I think it's also possible to say no limit at all, and then in rulemaking, something happens that basically says, well, if we're going to do under 13, here's a whole new set of rules, or I can be handled with rulemaking. I think we have a consensus around no limit.
Can I ask a clarifying question
Mhm.
that I think Daniel's going to be the best expert on? So today, I believe for any donation in Oregon that goes into ORSTAR, and including donations for the city program, birth date is not a required field. And so that's like part one is if we have any kind of age limit, it's going to require for every contribution to also submit birth date. And then secondly, so today, doesn't the Portland program match against the voter file to basically determine if somebody's an eligible donor? Like, how is that going to work if there are folks who are donating who there's nothing to match against because they're 6 or whatever?
The city of Portland does not require birth date, but it does require people to affirm that they're at least 18 when they do donate. And the city of Portland has a process for, I'm not going to go into great detail because of time, but it has a process for reaching out and confirming that someone is a resident of the city if they are not registered to vote too. Because like they're permanent residents and people are not registered to vote are certainly allowed to like get matched under the Portland program too. So I'm going to call the vote actually. Because we're going to lose people in a few minutes and I really want to make sure we get to the topics at hand. So
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt no age limit, but that contributions have to file the federal law that the contribution is made knowingly and voluntary by the minor, the funds are owned or controlled by the minor, such as from a trust or financial account in their name, and the contribution is not made using funds given to the minor for the purposes of making the contribution.
okay. I was going to write shorthand here, knowingly made, and I will, go and fill out that language later.
A second.
Okay. So we are voting on the highlighted section. Okay. We have a motion on the table to hold a vote. Lisa,
Yes.
Becca,
Yes.
James,
Abstain.
Kari,
Yes.
Beth,
Yes.
Roxy,
Yes.
Terrence.
So just so I'm clear, I'm late, I'm sorry, guys. We're voting that there's no age limit for donations, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, I wish I would have weighed in more on this, but no, I don't agree with that. But go ahead. Absolutely not.
Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the oversight part, which is actually the very bottom. So there's a couple small changes here. One is that we had a request that we include this language. I highlighted: the county shall strive to appoint members who have demonstrated an interest in campaign finance funding and represent diverse interests, lived experiences, and communities of concern in geographic areas throughout the Multnomah County. And then appointment and terms. So I was talking over with my colleague, and they wanted additional clarity about how someone is appointed to serve a term of a vacancy. So like I said, they're not appointed to their own term, they're replacing someone. What is the language that we have around how they are, how long they can serve? And so I took this language from Portland, which is: commission members will be appointed by the Board of County Commissioners and serve 4-year terms, starting March 1st, odd number years, except as appointment as follows. Before I get down to it, I guess I'll say members of the commission are limited to a maximum of 2 4-year terms, except that the members serving an initial term of less than 4 years may serve 2 subsequent 4-year terms. So if a position is vacated during a term, it will be filled with the unexpired term. So if like someone's appointed for the final 2 years of another individual's term because they dropped off, they would serve 2 years, and then they would be eligible to serve the full 8 years that everyone else is. So that kind of clarifies that piece. And then I also included this that says so we want to make sure that we're putting everyone on staggered terms here. And if you don't include this language, it kind of goes haywire without it. So 3 of the initial appointees from the Board of County Commissioner nominations will serve terms from 2025 to 2027. 2 of those BOCC nominations will serve terms from 2025 to 2029. 2 of the initial appointments from the commission will serve terms from 2025 to 2027. Okay, thank you, Felisa. And then 2 of the initial appointments from the commission will serve terms from July 1st to September 29th. So I added that in, and that allowed, again, everyone's going to still be able to serve the full 2 terms. But at the very beginning, it would be a problem if everyone is put on the same, trajectory. Oh, sorry, someone wants to join the call. Let me just make sure I let them in. That's Kari. Okay. So it would be a problem if everyone starts serving on the same timeline, which is 2025, because then you wouldn't have that staggered system. So this is from Portland's language and allows for that staggered system to exist. I'm going to read Felice's comment. And we're going to go 2 things: term limits generally, and our ability to fill these with long term, and a person on the board's term ending if the commissioner who appoints them quits. I think in that case they would still be serving this, because remember, like, a board member does not appoint an individual. The board members who are up that year appoint the individual, because that's what the IAC has opted. So if like the chair and the board are up in 2026 and then 2030, they can nominate if it's like 2028. And in that case, they would nominate together. And so if someone resigns, the other person is still there, still on the same term. So I added that language in. And then at the very bottom, I added this. And this is feedback I got from county staff. I got rid of consult on the hiring and firing decisions for program manager because HR has some potential issues with that. They suggested the Oversight Commission be consulted regarding the oversight of the program staff by county leadership. So it still allows for the Oversight Commission to be involved, especially when it comes to like hiring. But if there's like a firing decision based on like an HR violation, HR felt like it would be a major issue if the Oversight Commission had to be consulted before that happened. So that's why that change is happening. And then make any other changes for program rules if enough members of the county board have a conflict of interest, as defined here. And we replaced that with the IAC felt strongly. Oh, we lost someone. The IAC felt strongly that should the situation arise where a majority of the county board has a conflict of interest regarding a change to program rules, that the Oversight Commission should be delegated the authority to make necessary changes to program rules in place of the board. The IC requests that during the policy development, the county attorney's office explore how that authority may be delegated in that circumstance. So still says if someone's going to be conflicted out, if Board of County Commissioner members are conflicted out and they cannot vote, then the Oversight Commission may be able to step in and make those votes, because otherwise everything would be frozen. Which is something that it was a threat that happened at the city of Portland. So I know, like, let's have some discussion about that, because I know that is a lot of new stuff. James, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I think generally those changes look fine to me and capture what I think we talked about, but I did just want to note we no longer have quorum. So unless we're getting somebody else here, we're done.
Yeah, no, I'm asking Roxy to come back, and then Kezia is actually joining at 10:15. And so we should, between those two, we should be able to get there.
Yeah, I think it's all looks fine. I'm not going to double check your math of your calendar, but otherwise I think it all looks fine. Oh, I do see a February 29th, 2029, which is not a real date.
Oh, I was going to say February 28th. Thank you for catching that.
Other than that, I'm not going to double check your math in your calendar.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And like, you know,
We're double checking, which I'm glad you got.
Copy editor, not math guy today.
I think that this would allow, and you know, like these dates are aspirational. If the county needs to adjust these dates, the board may like say, you know, instead of July 1st, maybe like August 1st or something. Yeah. Other thoughts that we have about this piece?
So, I guess I'm not clear about what happens between February 28th of 2027 and July 1st of 2027. Like, why are the end dates different than the beginning dates? Don't we always want to have 9 impaneled members?
Yeah, the initial appointments will serve. Well, we want the initial appointments to begin on July 1st, 2025. Is that what you're asking about?
Oh, I see. These are all gonna I think the point is they're gonna always rotate on March 1st, basically. March 1st is our date when they rotate. However, this year it's too late to be March 1st.
Yeah. And we want them to be seated so much sooner, because that way they can help establish those administrative rules before the program begins. Roxy will be back on in 10 minutes.
Okay.
I like this. I am generally in favor of term limits. I think they're good ideas to get more people involved and to make sure that's not the same people making the same decisions for decades and decades. So I like this language. I don't think I have any issues with it right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is your maximum service here is 1 day short of 12 years. So yeah, and it's plenty of time.
Okay. While we wait for Roxy and Kezia, I think let's just proceed with conversation, and that way we can at least like establish and like root out any potential issues. What other, do people otherwise feel fine with the oversight policy?
Yeah.
Okay, great, wonderful. So that gets us there. Why don't we start with the charter? Because I think that's the one that needs the most conversation. And then we will, when we have Kezia and Roxana, we'll jump back and do the votes on contribution limits, and we'll jump back and do the votes on violations. So thank you all for your patience with this process. Okay. And if anyone needs to jump off beforehand, please let us know so we can, you know, adjust accordingly. So if you go under charter amendment, this one's a little more complicated. So what we've heard are concerns that people had that the current charter is too constrictive, and it prevents a public financing program from setting contribution limits that are higher than what's in the charter. And so like if we wanted to have, you know, wanted to allow a candidate to be able to give themselves $1,000 to start out their campaign, or be able to loan themselves $5,000 like what the Portland program allows, or be able to set in-kind donations higher than $603, we're not able to do that because of the charter. Also, because of the charter, candidates have to put paid for by Multnomah County if they get matching funds, because they have to like list all of their you know, their top donors on, and technically we are a donor, even though like that's not clearly the purpose of the law. So the charter has some constrictions that make it challenging to run the program as best as we possibly can. So what Portland does is Portland allows for that exceptional language, and in Portland they say a candidate participating in government system public funding for campaigns may receive any amount that such system allows for participating candidates to receive. So under Portland's charter, there's a carve out for people who run under the program, and that allows, you know, the program to set like those limits we just talked about, and like make sure that candidates don't have to put paid for by the city of Portland on their mail. So that's what I suggested here. Beth, you had a question, and then James.
Oh, I was just wondering if, which sounds like there's a way to get around it so it doesn't say paid for by Multnomah County, because I could see that being an issue. I even think if we could just change it so it said paid for by Multnomah County's like public matching program or something like that, might make that concern around, you know, people being like, why is Multnomah County paying for this candidate's race? That could add clarity, but you were just saying something that might amend that, so my point might not be necessary.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We would like definitely want to see clarity on that. James?
Yeah, I do think, Beth, that they could say paid for by the public matching program. But I do, Daniel, I think that the proposed language that you have here would not actually remove the need for candidates to disclose Multnomah County as a donor. I think that's a separate part of the charter that requires those disclosure pieces, and I think we would have to modify that part of the charter to say that the county, like that funds received from the public matching program don't need to be included in the top list of donors.
Oh yeah, you know what, you are right, because it says may receive any amount that such system allows, and that doesn't allow for disclosure.
I think it's a separate part of the city of Portland's charter that makes it so that you don't have to disclose that. And I think we would need to make the same recommendation here. I don't think you need the actual language here, but I do think we want to, you know, include in our recommendation that the county, you know, if the county is going to amend the charter, that it includes excluding public matching dollars from the need to disclose on advertisements.
Okay. All right. So that is the staff recommendation, but if you scroll down a little further, we have the different options. And so I kind of created a chart here that lays out pretty clearly what those options are and how they work. So option one is what we just talked about, the staff recommendation, and it would require voters to pass a charter amendment. It would align the benefits are it aligns the Portland's charter, or aligns to the Portland's charter. It's straightforward within the IEC purview. So like that, it's straightforward, comma, it is within the IEC purview, because like you are here to make recommendations on a public matching program specifically. It takes less IEC bandwidth. It keeps policy out of the charter. So we don't have to like put the exact numbers in the charter. It likely has the most political support. It maintains the program authority to like make rules, and you know, if we decided to align those rules with the state or city, we have that ability to do so. It allows the program to align rules with the state or city as it chooses. The drawbacks are it does not change the rules for candidates who run outside of the Portland Public Campaign Finance. It does not guarantee alignment with the state unless the board and PCF supports changing the rules. And the timeline would be 2027 at the earliest, because it would have to still go through a board process, and then if it got referred out, it would still have to go to voters. So I think the earliest it would probably be actionable would be 2027. So that's option number one. What questions do we have about option number one, given that we read the chart?
Why couldn't it be on the November 25 ballot? Or May 26 ballot?
I think if it was on well, from what the chair's office has told us is that if they want to address the charter, that they would want to do a broader process and potentially explore other changes as well, including the definition of small donor committees, for instance. So I think that they probably would need more time, and probably I don't think they could get it on for the November 2025 ballot because of that process. And that's just an educated guess. So I may be wrong on that.
And then how much they want to prioritize it. I mean, there's plenty of time to craft language and pass it out of county commission.
That's true. That's true. It's possible they may be able to get on for the May 2026 ballot. I could see that as being a little more likely. Okay. So that is, what other thoughts do we have about option number one before moving on?
I mean, my basic take is I would support all of them, largely because I think we should raise the limits for both participating, well, definitely for non-participating candidates, and potentially for participating candidates as well. I know that I might have a minority position there, although I would say that in our limits subcommittee, both Marshall and I agreed that it would make sense for the county limit to align with the new state limit, which is currently set at 3,300, which happens to also align with the federal limit.
Okay.
And then our primary concern is about around 6- and 7-figure donations in politics, which is what Oregon has been suffering under for many years.
Okay. So open option one, but would prefer that candidates who are run outside of the program be able to raise as much as $3,300, which is what candidates running for the Oregon House are able to raise. Is that right?
Yeah, I think if I was going to propose a charter amendment, it would be candidates in Multnomah County can raise the maximum allowed under state law. Period.
Okay. Well, that does bring us to option three, which is
basically option three. Yeah.
Yeah. Amend the charter to change the campaign finance rules for all county candidates. Would require the voters to pass the charter amendment is how it works. The benefits are allows candidates running outside the Portland, the public financing program to raise larger donations depending on language that, and depending on the language could also align with state or city law, depending on what else is put in there. It could take a little bit more bandwidth, than the IAC has right now. Although the language Carly suggested is pretty straightforward. Maybe outside the IAC purview, because we're supposed to focus on public financing changes.
Daniel, it occurs to me that first of all, we're having a quorum challenge here. And even if we get a couple more people here and get us a quorum, I'm a little uncomfortable making a charter amendment recommendation without everyone's views. These are the sort of juggling group of which quorum do we have? I wonder if it would make sense, Daniel, for your report, because again, we're not amending the charter. We can't even put a charter amendment up for the voters as this body. We're just recommending that the county board consider doing something they would put before voters. We're sort of 3 steps back. I wonder if it would make sense for us to actually, rather than taking a vote here, simply identify the 3 options, and then you could identify through your conversations which options are supported by which IAC members. This one was supported by this group of 4 people. This one was supported by this group of 3 people. This one was supported by this group of 7 people. Just and identify it, and then the county gets a rich set. The board gets a rich sense of what we were talking about. And again, I'd support all three. So like, I wonder if that's a better way to write this report that actually then delivers to the board a clearer sense of what we're talking about here.
That's interesting. Okay, how do people feel about that? So we're not making an official recommendation. We're just including the three options in the report and saying here's who supports which option.
How does that feel to you, James?
I mean, I guess in general, I'm in favor of presenting like, here's what we talked about. I guess I'm a little bit uncertain about, oh, these members of the committee like did this or didn't do this. I mean, in part because it feels like we haven't had like a vote. Like it's unclear to me like when we're even going to make it official who supports, you know, which options. And I do think we haven't done that anywhere else in the report where there's not been a consensus. It hasn't been, oh, Beth and James and whatever, Becca, Kezia supported this, you know, like we're supposed to, I think, kind of be speaking with one voice. And even when we like disagreed, like I think it would be fine to present the different options we considered and just say, you know, like we didn't reach a consensus.
That's fair. I don't want to suggest that we did reach a consensus on all three. I think if we said this is what we talked about and we did not reach consensus on them, they're presented for your discussion.
That makes sense to me. I agree with James. I would hesitate to put like who voted for what. I think that could put people in an uncomfortable situation. I think we could say we had 3 members support this, 3 members support this, 2 members support this, or whatever. That would be fine for me, I think. But I think in general, if we are not able to reach consensus for whatever reason that might be, I think it's fine to put that. Sorry, I'm just lost my train of thought like mid-sentence there, so I apologize.
Yeah, I think we don't have consensus. I think we might find our way to a majority vote on this, but again, given that we're so far back from we're recommending that the board consider a thing they put before the voters that they might then vote for. Like it's so far back that
I like that idea a lot, and I think I could just have its own section on charter amendment too, because it is relevant to everything we do here. So okay, that sounds great. I just got a text from Kezia. She's joining any second now, so then we can hold those remaining votes. In the meantime, a reminder to Terrence and Roxy, if you could please send me your bios, that'll allow me to put them in the report too. So just a 2 or 3 sentence bio would be fantastic. You just email it to me today, or actually email me next week. That'd be okay. James, go ahead.
One, do we want to make I mean, I guess we have 5 right now. We could do a vote. I mean, do we want to vote on what we just said, that like our recommendation is to present, you know, the 3 things without consensus? Do you need that, Daniel, or?
I actually don't, because it's just a suggestion about the way to craft the report, but also our quorum is 6.
Okay. Our quorum is 6 on 9?
On 10.
Okay. And then I guess my only other thing is I wonder if you could make it clear in the chart that you have, which I know the chart isn't what will make it in, but like I think option 2, it should be clear that this is to not amend the charter, right?
Great.
it would be requesting a state law to override the charter.
Great suggestion, Kari. I really appreciate that. That I think is much more reasonable for this. Okay, good. Well, I think as soon as Kezia comes back, we'll be able to do these votes. For option 3, Kari, do you want me to capture that suggestion you had about the language of suggestion you had?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna write it out here. So your suggestion is I'm going to take that language I highlighted. I'm going to put it down here below here. Also, of course, include in a report. Could advertise. And can you remind me what the other sentence was you had? I think it was like candidates who run.
All candidates in Multnomah County shall be allowed to accept donations to the maximum allowed under state law.
Great. Okay. Excellent.
And so that would be option 3 then.
Yeah.
That'll be option 3. Yes.
I do think we want to, maybe it's a 4th option then, but like no change to the charter, basically. Not like change, not a state override change of the charter, but like, no
Everything's fine.
Because all 3 options now as written are like the committee recommends amending the charter, which I might be okay with like amending the charter in some specific ways, but I also feel pretty strongly that if we're gonna look at overriding the will of 80+% of Multnomah County voters, like we should talk to some voters first, before like carte blanche saying we all agree that the charter should be amended.
Well, the thing is,
the charter would be amended by voters.
Right. I think that there should be input, that the county board, before referring something to the ballot, should talk to more people than the 10 of us, even though I think we've done a great job and reflect a lot of different viewpoints.
yeah, and we will have a significant communication process when the report's released. Well, I guess the thing is, like, with option 4, if we say no change to the charter, does anyone on the IAC actually feel that there should be no change in the charter? Because the report is, what is the IAC's preference on these topics? And if like no one on the IAC has a preference.
I think James is saying he's in that position with regard to contribution limits.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying, James. Apologies. Okay, good.
And that's a legitimate argument that I disagree with.
Okay, that's great. Okay, that is really helpful. Thank you so much. So let me just see.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Kari. Sorry.
I was going to say on the disclosure, the paid for by problem, I would love to get legal analysis on whether that's really the case. Is Multnomah County really a donor in the sense that they're making a donation is a voluntary contribution of your own funds, right, to support a candidate, whereas the public financing system is not that.
Yeah, and City of
That's a
Portland
good
got
point.
that. What do you say, James?
That is a good point. I guess, and if we can get away with like that being the practice without having to amend the charter, then I'm all for it. I just know I ran a campaign for a participating candidate, and I was also involved in the authoring of the City of Portland like ballot measure. And our intent was not that the city would need to be listed on advertisements. And then the auditor's office, and then I was later running a campaign for a participating candidate, and the auditor's office made us put it on there. And then later, with no change in the charter, in the next cycle, the auditor's office said you don't need to put it on there. So like, I do understand the desire for some kind of clarity that makes it clear for everyone participating that it doesn't need to be listed. If that does not, I agree with Kari, like it feels like this is not a donation. But if clarity is needed, I think I'm in the boat, and I imagine that there is consensus for this part, that like our intent is not that matching funds need to be disclosed on every advertisement in the way that like donations do.
Yeah, the whole point is to identify who potentially has influence over you. And the campaign matching program does not have influence over you.
I think yeah, so the City of Portland did get that legal analysis. And it's kind of like a little bit of a back and forth, but eventually they did get that legal analysis saying that like they did not have to be listed as a donor on the campaign ads. But I'm not sure if that was because it has that exclusion language, which I actually don't think would apply because given what James said about, it doesn't mention that specifically. Or if there was another reason. So I think just getting that legal analysis would be good anyway, too, because I think everyone recognizes that's not the purpose of the charter amendment, too. Okay. So bear with me 1 second. I'm gonna just call and make sure Terrence comes back. We just take like maybe a 2-minute break and then we'll be able to take up the next part.
Kezia just appeared in the document. You must be on
Oh,
her way.
fabulous. Great.
I'm still here. I'm just walking around my house.
Yeah, thank you, Terrence. We're just taking a little moment and Kezia is gonna join in like a very quick second and then we'll be able to hold these votes and then we'll be done.
Okay, my phone
Excellent.
just died. That's it.
Okay, great. Kezia's here. Thank you, Kezia, for joining. Really appreciate it. That allows us to hold these votes. So as people come back, we're set on most things. We just need to hold a vote on the contribution limit size. And then we actually need to hold a vote on affirming the policy around the Oversight Commission. The Oversight Commission we've established consensus on. We just actually need to hold a vote. In the contribution limits, we actually had a vote before, but it was a tie. So we're going to try once more. And if not, then we'll just include both in the process. Beth, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question on the contributions limit piece because I know that, or I guess, so we had 3 people on who voted on that earlier. 2 voted no, 1 voted yes. Does that impact? Do their votes at all impact this vote? Is my question. Like, will it be counted at all?
That's a good question. I don't know. So what I would do is I would probably reach out to someone in the county to clarify that.
Okay.
Because technically you can't vote in proxy.
Yeah.
And so if people vote and then they disappear and then they vote, come back. Or I don't know, their votes are still counted from previously before.
Okay. I was just curious in case that one way or the other, if that drastically changes this vote that we're about to have, how that might impact it when we know if there's other members of the committee and how they feel, and if that's, yeah.
Yeah, we're still including both viewpoints in the report too. Okay, great. Well, let's go ahead and do the violations one first. I'm sorry, the oversight one first. So again, you scroll down to the oversight part, which is I think the final section here. Program oversight. So we're voting to adopt this because actually we've never voted to adopt this policy. So we have the highlighted part here about the language about supporting diverse backgrounds and and supporting nominees and requesting that nominees from different communities be appointed. And then we have the appointment in terms themselves. Again, the county may adjust the dates there, but it does provide that template for how you have that staggered term and how you fill vacancies and clarify what people's terms are. And then at the very bottom, there's those 2 changes that we have as a result of feedback from the staff. One is a potential issue HR policy, and one is clarity for the county attorney's office too. So do we have a motion to adopt the program oversight policy?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Great.
Yeah, second.
All right. All right. Beth.
Yes.
Terrence. And Terrence, you're on mute.
Yes, I'm here. Yes.
Thank you. All right.
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Kezia,
Yes.
Roxy. Roxy, you're on mute. Okay, well, Roxy might have stepped away for a second. That's okay though, because we still have quorum, we still have to vote. I just couldn't put did not vote Roxy. And then finally, let's go back and do the contribution limits too. So if you scroll to the very top, contribution limits, staff recommendation, the ISC recommends a policy of $350 contribution limit on individuals and qualifying organizations. And the limit does not apply to small donor committees. The intention is to align the contribution limits for these donors with the limits established under the Portland Small Donor Elections Program. Participating candidates cannot loan or give themselves more than $350 to their campaign. And the IEC recommends that the Board of County Commissioners, the IEC recommends that the Oversight Commission establish the limits. And we already actually voted on that part, so we don't need to vote on that again. So I'm going to remove that part. So actually just voting on this first part that I am going to highlight right here. Do we have a motion?
Well, I think we probably should have a little bit of discussion here, just to catch everyone else up on the conversation. We had a 3-3 vote previously today, about an hour ago. And there were some folks who felt that the 350 limit is exactly correct. And then myself and 2 others thought that the limit should be the county charter limit of $603. I actually should be higher than that, but that's the county charter limit. And that was the position of the limit subcommittee, which was me and Marshall. That was our recommendation to this group. And now we're discussing whether it should be 350. And if that fails, then I would have a motion to make it 603. Does that cover everything?
Yeah, I think it does cover everything. Thank you for explaining that.
Beth?
Beth?
Yeah, I just wanted to, if it's okay, to speak to the 350 limit piece just briefly. I personally believe that if you are participating in the public matching program, you're getting a lot of public funds, then it makes sense that your contribution limits would be lower. Kari, I completely understand your Marshall's positions on like getting those really big figures out. I completely agree with y'all, and I'm glad that we're all aligned on that, and just having those slight disagreements on like where the limits should be. But my opinion, if you're getting matching funds, then I think your limits should be lower than folks not participating in the program. So that's why I, along with a couple others, voted, I think, more so yes to the 350 limit. So just wanted to provide that insight as well, if that might be helpful for folks who weren't here earlier.
Yeah. In the spirit of that, Kari, do you want to take a minute or two just to explain the 603? Or why you proposed 603, and then we can hold the vote.
Yeah, I just think again, our primary goal here is to end the world in which we're getting $50,000, $100,000, $2 million donations. I think 603 and 350 are effectively the same from that perspective. I think campaigns need money to operate, and I don't think a $603 limit is corrupting or nobody's for sale for $603. I do think that campaigns should be able to do a choose your own adventure. If you are the kind of campaign that wants to invest your time in getting $500 and $600 donations and not in the grassroots side, go for it. If you're the kind of campaign that wants to spend your time chasing down $20 donations so you get the matching funds that then make it possible for you to compete in that $100 campaign, great. I prefer a sort of a choose your own adventure kind of mentality when it comes to letting campaigns run the kind of campaigns they want to run. Different candidates have different communities, and I think they're all valid. Once we've eliminated the Phil Knight, Don Morissette $500,000 checks from our system.
Okay, thank you. Given that, let's take a vote on the 350 limit, and if that fails, then we'll do a vote on 603, and if not, we'll just include both in the report. So do we have a motion on the 350 language, and that is highlighted on the screen?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay. Okay, let me just. Okay. Beth,
Yes.
Terrence,
Yes.
Kari,
No.
James,
Yes.
Kezia,
Yes.
Roxy, Roxana. Okay. I know she's working at the same time, so she might have had to step away for a second. Okay. I would just note that Roxana did not vote. Okay.
I think actually whether it's this group or this group plus the previous votes that were here, I think it looks like the 351.
I think that is correct, yes. But again, we'll note both in the report. Okay, well, thank you all so much that we actually did it. We actually got through all the policy recommendations. I am so thrilled. Does anyone else? So we'll be meeting next week. It'll be the last meeting. We will be affirming that or making any final changes to that report. I'm going to send you all a version of that report in Google Docs early, and hopefully by the end of today, latest on Monday, in which you'll have a chance to like edit those, and we'll do it in a way that doesn't risk quorum at all. But everyone have a chance to like edit on the Google Docs themselves, and then we'll take those edits and incorporate them in. Again, we're asking people like, don't so much focus on the copy editing part. It's really more like the high level stuff, like does this reflect your views? Is there anything here that's so concerning that you wouldn't want to sign it? And that's where we are on that. James, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I wondered, since we've got a different configuration than at 9 a.m., if you wanted to re-ask or remind people when this will go to the Board of County Commissions, and ask if there are other folks who would potentially. So far, Kari and Beth have, now Terrence is gone. Maybe this just needs to be included in your email, but I did want to give everyone, including Marshall and folks who couldn't be here today, the opportunity, if they want to be considered or be part of the group who's presenting or available when the presentation goes to the Board of County Commissioners. I just wanted to make sure everyone heard that.
Yeah, and I mean, you basically summarized it, but the thing I'll add is that we have an appointment on May 6th to present the findings to the Board of County Commissioners. We will be briefing them beforehand individually, but this will be the first time we go to the full board. May 6th at 9 a.m. We're looking for 2 individuals to join from the IAC. Ideally, that represent, a diversity of like perspectives and backgrounds and communities too on the commission. So I know we've already run this by. I think we have the initial team of Kari and Beth, but if anyone else would like to be, involved in this process too, we can definitely like consider that. And if you email me, if unless you want to say something now, if you want to email me after, we can always like talk by email too about it. All right. With that being said, thank you so much. I'm going to give you 20 minutes exactly of your day back. Yeah, James.
Well, can you just make sure to include that last ask in the email that goes out? I just want to make sure Marshall and Roxy and Terrence all kind of know, hey, if they want to be part of that, that they need to email you.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, energy, and thank you for like your flexibility in making this meeting happen and like helping us reach quorum. That is a huge help. And with that, I will let you all go, but I'll see you all next week for the final meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.